Hello everyone, we are continuing with day 25 of Sefer Chafetz Chaim Yomi. And with this day, Chafetz Chaim went to the last section of his whole introduction, and this is the Sefer where he enumerates 4 arurin, 4 curses that one may incur when one speaks Lashon Hara or Rechilut. And with this section, we will finish the introduction, and we will, with the help of God, move on to the section with the halachot. Okay, the first curse that one incurs when he does not guard himself against the terrible practice of speaking Lashon Hara is the curse of arur makeh reu b'seter. Cursed is the one who strikes his fellow in secret. This is found in Sefer Dvarim, chapter 27, verse 24. And the commentary, Rashi, to that verse, who cites Sifri, says that this refers to someone who speaks Lashon Hara. And it's important, and it's interesting that the Balaturim, a commentary on the Torah, who's known for his commentary, to include Masorah and Gematria, he notes that the Gematria of Beseter is the same Gematria as Lashon Hara, which I calculated is the number 662. Now this is the first curse, and this applies in the footnote. It says this applies to someone who insists on anonymity, that he insists on being anonymous when he's speaking Lashon Hara. The very fact that he's deliberately speaking Lashon Hara behind the subject's back demonstrates the severe corruption of his character, and it subjects him to this curse. Because a person who has any sense of moral, he would not deliberately speak Lashon Hara behind someone so that they won't see. At the very least, it's like the difference between a thief and a robber. A robber, he does not fear anyone. He doesn't fear God, nor does he fear people. And he goes out in the open, he goes and robs someone. A thief, on the other hand, he fears people, but he does not fear God. Right? Because he thinks, since people don't see me, God doesn't see me, so he fears that people won't be able to see him, and he doesn't really care that God will see him or not. And that's why a thief is considered worse than a robber. That is just a side note. The second curse that one incurs is the curse found in Dvarim, chapter 27, verse 18. And by the way, all of these curses are found in Parashat Ki Tavo. Is the curse arur maskeh iver baderech. Cursed is the one who misleads the blind on the way. And as we learned previously regarding lo titen michshol lifnei iver lo titen michshol, the command not to put a stumbling block before the blind. One who listens to a person's Lashon Hara and one who speaks Lashon Hara causes other people to sin by either accepting his Lashon Hara or by causing others to speak Lashon Hara. So a person, obviously a speaker, incurs this curse because he's placing a stumbling block. He's giving the opportunity for people to sin because he causes other people to listen and has v'shalom believe his Lashon Hara. And this also applies in the case of a listener, but only if the listener's the only one listening to the Lashon Hara account, because as we learned, only in the case of one person does a person transgress this command, because he is the one that allows the speaker to continue speaking Lashon Hara. If he just says, I don't want to listen, then the Lashon Hara speaker will stop. This is not the case if there are more than one person, because seemingly there are two people who the Lashon Hara speaker relies on. And then there are all the different details that we discussed earlier, but now is not the case to talk about them. The third curse that one incurs is the curse of arur asher lo yakum et divrei Torah hazot la'asot otam. Cursed is the one who will not uphold the words of Torah to perform them. This is in the same chapter, verse 26. So this means that someone who does not resolve to guard himself against transgressing any sin, including the sin of Lashon Hara, incurs this curse because he does not resolve to keep the entirety of the Torah. He is termed by the Torah a mumar ledavar echad, a renegade, which literally means a renegade regarding one matter. Since he flagrantly violates the severe prohibition and treats this aspect of Hashem's Torah as inconsequential, he's the same category as a mumar who disregards the entire Torah. And the Rabbeinu Yonah in a Sharei Tshuva explains why a mumar ledavar echad, a renegade regarding one matter, is so severe. And he brings a mashala analogy of a servant to his master. So a servant, he complies with all of his master commands except one. By defying that one request of his master, the servant demonstrates that he's essentially not subservient to his master, and he only complies with his commands, out of his own convenience. So too, someone who keeps all the mitzvot except one demonstrates that he's really not subservient to Hashem, and he performs mitzvot out of his own whim, right? If you can't perform your mitzvot right, obviously no one can perform all the mitzvot right away. But someone who decides, I'm not keeping this one mitzvah, he's considered that he's not subservient to Hashem at all, and he only fulfills the mitzvot out of his own convenience. And up to now we have listed 3 curses, right? The curse of someone who speaks Lashon Hara beseter in private, someone who causes a stumbling block for other people, and someone who does not uphold the words of Torah, and he disregards the command to distance oneself from Lashon Hara. One also can incur yet a 4th curse, and this is the curse also found in Parashat Kitavo, verse 16, Arur makle aviv ve'imo. Curse to someone who denigrates his father and mother. And we also the Chavetz Chaim also listed this in his list of positive commandments. The one who speaks Lashon Hara about his parents violates the command to honor his parents and be in awe of them. And he also incurs the curse of someone who denigrates his father and mother. And now the Chavetz Chaim will comment on the severity of the Torah's curses. You might say, oh, so what that the Torah curses me, right? Right? It just, is it like a regular person curses me? It doesn't really affect me. But in fact, the Gemara in Shavuot says that arur, when the Torah uses the term arur, it's both a curse and an excommunication, a nidui. An excommunication is any time a person is separated from the kahal, from the community, and it forbids him from having contact with his fellow Jews. And therefore, any person who knows to be negligent with regard to the bitter sin of Lashon Hara should be fearful for his soul, for perhaps, God forbid, he has been ostracized in heaven. And then he cites the Sefer Charedim, which is a Musar book, and a halachic book, of the great punishment of someone who denigrates his father or mother. And then the Chavetz Chaim further says that the continuing saying Lashon Hara, that developing this bad character trait, leads people to develop other bad character traits, such as the character trait of cruelty or the character trait of anger, all of which are horrible, horrible sins, which the Chazal explain in great detail of the gravity of these bad character traits. And therefore, the Chavetz Chaim concludes, unlike the other character traits of, anger, cruelty, jealousy, which are all included in the one verse that says to emulate Hashem's ways, which thereby excludes the other bad character traits that are not part of Hashem's ways. the sin of Lashon Hara is explicitly stated, is explicitly taken out and singled out as a character trait that we have to distance ourselves. And therefore, one has to be extra careful with the sin of Lashon Hara. Not only does it cause much havoc for oneself and for other people, but it also leads you to develop all the other bad character traits that the Chafetz Chaim listed and the Chafetz Chaim did not list. And with this, the introduction is concluded. And the Chafetz Chaim concludes and adds that the reader should read, review, and reread this introduction, because it will assist you in the future in matters of avoiding Lashon Hara more than anything else. Right? We will learn the halacha, right, that will tell us the guidelines of when we cannot speak and when we can't speak, when we must speak. But for a person to avoid speaking Lashon Hara, he needs to have some kind of drive, some kind of will, some sort of inspiration. And with this, the Chafetz Chaim says that this introduction will definitely help a person in the future in avoiding Lashon Hara, because he will realize how impactful, how destructive one word, one statement can be, and he will therefore guard himself against it to the fullest extent. And may we, with the help of Hashem, truly fulfill this, and truly take in everything that we learned in this introduction, and truly work on ourselves to stop saying things that we do not that we should not say, and we should only say good things about our fellow Jews, and that we should only think good things about our fellow Jews. And with this, we conclude the introduction with the help of Hashem. Thank you, Hashem. We will continue B'ezrat Hashem tomorrow with Ilchot Isurei Lashon Hara, starting with Klal 1, Seif 1. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.